Welcome to the Embracing Neurodiversity podcast, where I share my journey of embracing the experience of my amazing son who is on the spectrum. I am Ivory, a mother, educator, and personal growth enthusiast. My goal is to offer insight and stories that may inspire you on your own parenting journey. Thank you for tuning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to everyone who is logging in. Thank you for tuning in. These are our monthly Wednesday lunch and learn sessions for parents of neurodiverse children. Again, I appreciate you for checking in today. Today's focus area will be on routines, and I am going to talk a little bit later as to why. But first, of course, before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about myself so that you know who you are listening to. My name is Ivory. I am a native Kansas Citian. I have lived in Chicago for over 15 years, but currently moved back to my hometown of Kansas City. The most important part of me is that I am a dedicated mother to a 7-year-old whose name is Khalil, and he is on the autism spectrum. I am an educator. I have been an educator for over 15 years. I hold a master's in public policy. I was a former assistant principal, and currently I am an education consultant. And so, obviously, you would imagine with all of the years of experience I've had as an educator with working with families and having my own son who is neurodiverse, I am particularly passionate about supporting parents in this area, especially as it relates to their own personal development and self-care, because that is crucial to the journey of working with and supporting your own child. Or if you're an educator, how do you ensure your knowledge and your personal development is intact to support students and families? And one of the ways I do that is through embracing neurodiversity, where we design curriculum for schools and we offer consultation around the IEP process. And then I work with parents as well in group settings and one-on-one settings. I would imagine that those who are on the line are familiar with the term neurodiversity, but I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge it and name it so that we are all on the same page. And so, in essence, neurodiversity is both the idea that it recognizes that everyone has a way in which they think, and it varies, hence the term spectrum. And there are natural variations to the human brain functioning and in the human behavior, right? But what typically falls under the neurodiversity umbrella are those who have an autism diagnosis, ADHD, and or dyslexia. Those are the most common, right? But most importantly, what neurodiversity does, it promotes the idea of acceptance and inclusion of those who learn differently. And so it is the idea in which I fundamentally believe in, is that there is no right or wrong way in which there is to learn or to engage with the world, but it is just simply different. And it is important upon us as parents and educators to learn the strengths within our children who are neurodiverse so that we can enhance those. This is a 45-minute session, and if at any point you have questions throughout the session, please feel free to come off mute or put them in the chat box. Statistically, we know that according to CDC, that 1 in 36 children are diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum, though this number is increasingly becoming lower over time. And a lot of that has to do with people identifying the traits of autism more frequently now than they did 5, 10, 15 years ago. And also, around 15% of students in the United States are enrolled in some special education program, which tells us that those young people are neurodiverse in one way or the other. And so I highlight these statistics to help you all understand that although we feel that having a neurodiverse child is an anomaly, in actuality, more people experience this than we would imagine. You may have had the experience as I have on a daily basis. When I mentioned that I have a son who's on the autism spectrum, I always have someone say that, like, I know someone, or there's someone in my family, or I know someone who has a child or someone in their family who also is neurodiverse. And so it's more common than we think, which is why it is even more important to become educated about it and to embrace the strengths that come with having the neurodiverse child. And believe it or not, there are strengths that come with that. And we will talk about that in a little bit. As it relates to embracing neurodiversity, specifically for me, it is important to support the parent. While there are increasingly services and supports for our children, although not enough yet, and we know that it is difficult to get the services that we need, there is especially a deficit in supports and services for parents in terms of mindset shifts, in terms of self-care, in terms of navigating the process, in terms of unpacking your own grief, right? Because the reality is that for many of us, we have to let go of the idea of what we wanted our children to be or what we think they should be and embrace who they actually are, which is a process in itself. And it is my experience as a mother of a child on the spectrum that there were not a lot of support services for my own process and journey. And so having had the opportunity to be educated in the field of education, I decided to create a platform for parents to have that space to unpack authentically and transparently. And one of the ways that I have designed a space for parents to do that is by dividing up the phases in which parents embark on the journey of supporting and raising their neurodiverse child. And so from my experience, although every child is unique and different, there is still a very unique experience that most parents of neurodiverse children have. And it has been broken down for me in these three phases. Obviously, it is the discovery phase where you learn that your child is neurodiverse in one way or the other, whether it is through an official diagnosis or perhaps you just observe your child and you had the inkling or something in your gut that is telling you that my child is a little bit different, right? So that discovery phase is a phase within itself. And then there's an acceptance phase that once you have understood the differences that your child has, you begin to embark upon the journey of learning to accept it. And then lastly, the embracing phase, which comes with more of a celebratory and seeing and understanding and rooting yourselves in the strength of your child. We're going to break these down a little bit more in depth so that you have a little bit more clarity. And so the first, as I mentioned, discovery phase is in that phase is like building your knowledge. Like, what does it mean to be autistic? Although it's different for every child, there are some commonalities. So learning about it through reading and research, but also observing your child very closely. What services do I need? More often than not, from my experience, when I got the diagnosis for my son, they give you a list of services and say you can call to see, but you never really know what services does my child need, what services do they not need, who has the best services. That is the barrier in itself, and that sometimes takes a while depending on your capacity and access to resources, but the services are key, and the sooner you get them for your child, the better. And then obviously, and for you, find someone you can trust to talk to about how you're feeling about this discovery phase. It's really important to unpack it and talk about it openly and candidly with someone that you trust and not to hold it in, because the reality is there is a level of fear of the unknown, and there is a level of grief of letting go of what you wanted or assumed would be, right? And it's important to embark upon the journey of unpacking that so you are prepared to work with your child and support them in the way that is best for them. And then, of course, that acceptance phase. And so this is where you're building those coping skills. Perhaps you're able to talk to someone candidly. Perhaps you are starting to understand your child's routine and the way in which they move about in the world. And you are starting to celebrate their growth areas, right? Maybe there were some things you thought they couldn't do, and now all of a sudden they're doing them. Or maybe there's something that you've been working on that and you see progress in them. Like those things are incredibly important to celebrate. And this is the phase in which you know you're starting to accept when you are cheering your child on in terms of their growth. And so not always thinking about what they're incapable of doing, but leaning in on the areas that they have progressed in is essential. And then we're going to talk about this today in depth. I'm really excited about design and commit to a routine and a plan. A routine is important for every human being, honestly. When you wake up each day and you know what to expect from your day, your mental health is better, your physical health is better, you are more productive, your stress it decreases. And so imagine the impact that that has upon a child, particularly a child who is on the autism spectrum and needs to know and understand what their day is going to look like. A routine is key. In the acceptance phase, you are equipped to try to design that routine because you know what your child needs and you know what you need as it relates to parenting a neurodiverse child. And then lastly, that embracing phase. This is where you begin to practice the things that you're really, really good at when it comes to your child. And you start to think about their future, right? Like what are some things that you want to see from them based on what their special interests are, what they lean towards. You know, it's really important to, when you're raising a neurodiverse child, to not necessarily lower the standards, but shift them to align them to what is best for your child, right? So it's this balance of continuing to dream for your child, but supporting them and remaining on the journey with them, no matter where you are on the journey, right? Always continuing to learn and adapt because there are new things, new studies, new findings every day, particularly around autism, but also your child is going to grow and learn and change over time. And so how do you adapt to that? My son, I mean, he's only 7, and he was diagnosed with autism when he was 4. And every month I recognize something new. And much of it is wonderful and enlightening, and some of it is a challenge. And so it's really important to be adaptable on this journey. But nevertheless, seeing the beauty in it all. I fundamentally believe that our children come into this world to also teach us something about ourselves. And so what am I also as the parent on this journey learning in this process is going to be key as well. And so, as it relates to that three-phase process, I have designed a blueprint for parents raising neurodiverse children. It is an 80-page blueprint that not only unpacks my personal story of embarking upon the journey of supporting my child and how I learned of his diagnosis, but I also talk about it in each phase. It's also important to keep in mind that three-phase process is a cyclical process. Sometimes it happens monthly, sometimes it happens yearly, sometimes it happens every 3 to 4 years. It really depends upon the parent and where they are in terms of their level of knowledge and comfort with raising a neurodiverse child. And so that phase can also start over and over and over again. Sometimes I'm in full embracing mode, and sometimes I'm in discovery mode. And so it's not a linear process, but what I've learned is that continuing to be in a place of self-reflection and absolute self-care has helped me to stay the course. And so check out the blueprint and journal. There's quite frankly nothing out there like it specifically for parents to unpack their feelings and emotions. So I highly encourage you to look into that. With that being said, I want to dive into routines. It's one of my favorite topics because I've seen my son thrived in months after incorporating a routine. And it's one of my favorite topics because it has not been a strong area of mine. Although I'm an educator and I've led schools, I am not a type A personality. I am not someone who is incredibly organized or structured. I am more of a creative, and I sort of move through, emotion and inspiration, right? And I had to learn very quickly that that does not work for my child who is on the spectrum. Like, we need to have some clear structures in place. And by putting those in place, it also helps me on my journey of becoming a little bit more clear and organized in terms of how I needed to structure my own personal daily routines, right? And so, going back to what I mentioned around how the positive impacts of a routine, I want to reiterate that, of course, it reduces anxiety and it helps them to thrive, but it also creates a sense of security, which is super, super key for neurodiverse children, particularly children who are on the autism spectrum, that experience sensory overload. It is important for them to know what their day is going to look like and to feel secure in the spaces that they enter, and a routine helps with that. So I'm going to lay out 5 simple ways that you can establish a routine if it is not something that you have been accustomed to incorporating. One of them is visuals. And so I have visuals in my son's room where I show each day. Today is Monday. First is there's a column for you're gonna brush your teeth, wash your face, get dressed, put your shoes on, put your backpack. Then it's school time. We literally have little card visuals that show that so that he can make the connection. And it also has helped with his speech, right? Because he'll look at the picture and be able to say, brush your teeth, because he has made that connection. So I highly recommend that you find some sort of visual aid, create one. I bought mine for like $10 off of Amazon. And so it helps in a credible way. And then I'm finding that Khalil is sort of going back to it independently to sort of move the pieces as he has completed a task. So not only does it help with speech and helping them to know what to expect, but it also increases their social skills in terms of independence, right? I have seen that firsthand. So I highly encourage that. We also have a routine on our refrigerator for the afternoon in terms of like snack and homework, speech therapy, tablet time, bedtime. Like, these things are, I find, to be crucial. My son will go over to the refrigerator and point to, we have a day of the week where he goes swimming. And so he'll point to a swimming time because it's his favorite thing to do. And so it also gives them a level of autonomy and ownership over their lives as well. The second is consistent timing. And so those daily activities, while it doesn't have to be on the dot, it's important for them to be around the same time each day to create that predictability. Again, of course, we know that this reduces anxiety, but transitions can be difficult sometimes for our babies. And so helping them to understand what's next, timers are essential. When Khalil he loves, like most kids, his iPad. I usually put a timer on how much time he can have on his iPad, or maybe he's done something that was unsavory. I'll put a timer on for how much time he cannot have on his iPad. But also, if it's bath time or eating time, like, sometimes timers help with that as well in terms of the transition piece. So that's highly recommended to pull up on your phone and allow your child to see the numbers change as well. That I found that to be helpful. One of my personal favorites, positive reinforcement. It is key to instill a level of confidence in your child, because one day they will need to be able to advocate for themselves. And the primary way to advocate for yourself is to accept yourself and know where your areas of growth are and know what your needs are so that you can speak to them. And one of the ways that to do that is, as a parent, that you highlight their strengths or highlight when they've done something really well. big or small, we tend to, and naturally so as parents, focus on the things that we want them to do better at. So we're redirecting, or we're telling them how to do something different or better, or teaching them a new skill. But I would also want to encourage you that when they're doing things really well or right or correctly, that you cheer them on, that you acknowledge that no matter how small the task is, those things go a long way for every human being. Imagine for us as adults, when someone says you've done something really well, you feel good. And our children deserve that as well. Flexibility is key, similar to adaptability. Our children change, life happens. So the routine should be structured, it should be timely, it should happen around the same time. But you want to leave room for things to just be, right? Like your child doesn't have to every hour have something that they need to do. Free time is important, brain breaks are important. I was reading recently in terms of like affirming neurodiversity. Our children are often in so many therapies like speech therapy, ABA therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, all of these therapies, and it can become overwhelming and taxing on a child. And so I was reading an article where they were saying sometimes it's okay to take a break from therapies, your therapy sometimes, even though as parents, like you're really like concerned that if you take a pause, is that going to impact your child? But our kids deserve a break too, but not only just from therapy, but just sometimes at home, having that free time to just play and not feel like you are in a structured mode is going to be key. And it also increases their independence too. A long time is important for us all, and so allowing your child space for that as well. And then incorporating their interests. I don't know about you, but my child has his special interests in the things that he does every day. Similarly, every day, probably watches the same YouTube video every day, has the same toys that he wants to engage with every day. Incorporating that into your routine, not negating them from that or denying them that satisfaction. It's really important that you honor their interests, because those are the things that help keep them regulated. They understand that these are my sensory seeking needs, and it will impact parents and families negatively to reject your child from engaging in their interests. Although it feels like they are engaging in it a little too much, you'd be surprised how much it helps to maintain a level of peace and harmony in your home. And so allowing your child space to be with their special interests, if it's music, perhaps also it can be used as a tool to get them to do the things that you actually they need to do. So I know my son, like we incorporate homework every day. If I want him to do his homework and sit to do his homework, then I am going to put out his favorite snack, or allow his tablet to uh, time to be increased. So it's sort of like that if then strategy. Like if you do this thing, then you can, engage in your special interest. So incorporate those special interests. Don't deny them from it. Actually use them to your benefit. I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking. If anyone has any questions, I would love to answer. And obviously, I never like to leave out of
Wherever you
any
are on the
session
journey as it relates
without
to your self-care and your
always
well-being,
ensuring and reminding
where
our
you want
parents
that
to
to go
center
over
them
time,
their
and what
self-care,
steps can you
right?
take now
Like it
towards
is
that?
incredibly taxing
For
to
example,
raise
think a
children
lot
who are
about, I want
neurodiverse.
to be
No
more
matter how
disciplined when
incredible
it
they are,
comes
it can be
to
taxing.
my physical
And
well-being. I'd love to
there's
run
studies out there
a
that show,
marathon one
particularly for
day.
mothers,
I'd
that
love
the stress
to
level for us is equivalent to a
have a
combat
yoga studio
soldier
one day,
for
right? Like
moms
I'm
who are
really
raising children
into
on the spectrum,
how
right?
does the
And so if
body
that is true, then it is so
show
important for
up
you to
for
incorporate
your
self-care in
mental
order for
health
you to
too.
stay the
And
course
so, like, that is
and be
that's how I
sustainable
like
on
to
this journey
evolve.
and to
But first,
support
I'm
your
starting with
child,
how I
right?
speak about
And so
myself
those
first,
support
right?
networks are
And
important with
so
people who
that is
understand
an
your lived
example
experience.
that
And
I want to
so
offer
I
to you so
highly
you can
recommend
begin to
support
think about
networks
your
with
own
other
future planning
autism
for
parents or
yourself,
parents of
for
neurodiverse
yourself,
children. So you
then
don't
your
have to
child.
always
And so with
explain,
that, I'm
what is
going to
going
end
on in
there.
detail
I'm
to people who
I
don't
also want to
understand. You
apologize
want to
that my
be
nose
able
is
to
stuffy. I have a
just be
cold
around people
with Khalil
sometimes who you
returning
don't have to explain
uh
that your child had a
back to
meltdown this
school. It's
morning
been a
and so
week.
you're frazzled
Of
for the rest
course,
of the
the
day.
germs, the
Some
children,
people just
he
get
has come
it,
home with a bit
and
of a
that
cough.
is
Thankfully,
refreshing.
he did
So
not
I
get a
highly
cold,
recommend that
but
you
of course,
incorporate
I
one or
got
two
one,
friends who are
and it is
also
okay.
parents of
We are
neurodiverse
here
children
and
into
we
your
are
lives.
going to
And then
continue
regular
to move forward.
relaxation. We tend to,
Slow
as
motion
parents, feel
is
like we
better than no
have to
motion.
check the things
So
off our
until
list,
next time,
whether it's
take care of
housework or
yourself.
career or parent duties. But some things you can just put a pause on and decide to relax. If the dishes aren't done tonight, they can be done in the morning. I need to just sit and enjoy the rest of my night. I highly encourage that. And then incorporating a hobby that does not revolve around family or work. That's something that is just for you is really going to be key and essential. And then lastly, if you're open and willing, I would also highly recommend professional counseling to be able to say aloud what you're thinking and feeling and sort of get it out of you. So you again are equipped to go about this journey in a way that is empowering for yourself and your child. So with that, I'm going to close out, but of course, I want to remind you as you are continuing to go on this journey of learning and embracing your child, that you continue to educate yourself and support your child in all the ways that they need it, and to begin to revolve yourself around like-minded people who have lived experiences as yours. The fact that you're on this call today is a testament to that. And so continue to embark upon that journey. In the meantime, I have a plethora of resources that you can access. Many of them are free. You can access them on my website, through my podcast, and you can always reach out if you have specific questions or need advice or input, particularly when it comes to the educational space, because that is my specific expertise. I am happy to help with that. I want to remind you that although this journey can be difficult at times, that your child is different and that's okay. They are still incredible human beings who have the ability to have thriving lives, if you choose to shift your mindset to seeing the beauty in this journey. Thank you all again for choosing to hop on. I am incredibly grateful for it. In the meantime, please stay in contact with me. I'm reading a chat because I just saw Kim. You left something. I just want to make sure I answer it. Is that the only option for getting a diagnosis? Well, honestly, it's depending upon your insurance, to be honest with you. So it's very difficult for me to answer that question in directly without like knowing the details in terms of the cost or charge. But I'm happy to talk to you about that offline if you want to email me about that. But I definitely acknowledge that in the healthcare system nowadays, like things are incredibly expensive. So depending on like your insurance and benefits, it varies. So we can unpack that separately if you'd like. Thank you all again. I hope you have an amazing, amazing week. And I hope we stay in contact. Have a wonderful, wonderful school year with your child, and you hang in there.